What's up, everybody? It's another beautiful day. Actually, is a beautiful day in Stockholm. Started out pretty crap. Thought that fall was finally starting to get its claws into us here in Scandinavia. But summer fought back valiantly and gave us a pretty nice afternoon, a little bit of sun. So it's that time. It's 3 in the afternoon. Cheers. So damn good. Hope you have your coffee. Hope you have your tea. If you don't, hope you have your, I don't know, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whatever floats your boat. But what are we going to be talking about today? And I think you can tell by the title, it's got something to do with Immortals. And it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I mean, it was interesting enough because I just happened to do a topic, Gold for Admins, last week on admins and how good admins are worth their weight in gold, and that they're the unsung heroes of events. They're the driving force behind events due to situations such as this one that just came up with, at Northern Arena. I talked a little bit about Northern Arena as well last week. But in this case, right, just so happens that in the grand finals, one of the players from Immortal had his sound-canceling headset off for 2 rounds of a match. And going into the third round, they caught on to it. He had put it on by the third round, but for the first 2 rounds, didn't have his sound-canceling headset on. And so that's bad enough, right? I don't think there's any real excuse for that. Sorry, Fallen, whether you understands English or not, or Zeus, right? But whether you understands English or not, it's pretty clear. I mean, since we've started using sound-canceling headsets, that you should wear your sound-canceling headset at all times. And that's kind of like okay, mouse plugged in, check. Keyboard, check. In-ears, check. Sound-canceling headset. Are we in a booth? No, we're not in a booth. All right, sound-canceling headset, check. I mean, yeah, if you're playing as a pro, it's one of the things. It's like a football player forgetting to tie his shoelaces. I mean, it's one of those things where kind of has to happen if you're going to be playing. So I don't think that there's really much room for interpretation here. I feel like, Fallen's a little out of line on this one, where he's just like, well, he doesn't understand English. Well, it's just like, no, but that doesn't matter. Whether he understands or not doesn't matter. It could be Cloud9, or it could be, the Swedes. It could be anybody. Doesn't matter which language you speak. Headset is on before the game goes live. So already error right there on the team side, on the player side, right? That unfortunately he didn't have his headset on, and then he put his headset on after the end of the second round. But by then, Immortals were up 2-0, and it's open for interpretation just how much he understood, if that information that he managed to get while his headset wasn't on, if that helped. All this stuff goes out the window because already, boom, just breaking one rule right there. Then you have the case again, coming back to the admins. After this, it kind of all just comes back onto the admins. Unfortunately for the admins, they found themselves in a hellish situation, because that's pretty much like the worst case scenario. It's not something that's in game this, or it's clearly listed, and it is in fact clearly listed in the rules. Took the time to go over the Northern Arena, presented by Bell. A little bit of free promotion there. Presented by Bell tournament. On their website, I'll include it in the text below. I'll include a link to their rule section. They have a nice, rule section. The only problem for me with their rule section, I mean, things are they've been pretty thorough going down the list of things that are against the rules, that are a problem. But it's clearly stated. It's actually the first line: during their matches, players must wear noise-canceling headphones provided by Northern Arena. So it's the first line of the rules. If you've read the rules, it's pretty hard to argue that, right? First line, boom, wear noise-canceling headphones. The problem with this rule set at this point, though, is just that, okay, so we're at 3.1.2, teams, players, right? These are the rules. But where's the infractions, the punishment? I mean, they in other parts of the rules, if you go down through the entire rule list, right? If you go down to other parts, there's other parts where it clearly states, it's up to the referee. The referee has the referee has the final call, final say on anything, basically. And so he's the voice of God. His decision is the final decision. So basically, he's the one who's making the call, right? And so that's a lot of pressure to be on a person. But if you're an admin, you're supposed to be able to fill that role. You know the rules back, front, and center. And, well, that's where it gets a little tricky, right? Because if you're an admin in this sort of scenario, and it's a tough one because context, right? Apparently, venue is about to shut down, or there's pressure on the tournament organizers to get the venue shut down. So any delay is basically costing you time because you're on the clock. You need to get this match finished ASAP so that you guys can clear out, because maybe at this point the venue is charging you money to keep the place open, right? And so you're looking at your sponsorship money, whatever it is you're using to run this thing, and that is dwindling the longer this goes past that deadline cutoff. So already poor planning there, unfortunately, that you started your finals a bit late, and you're going over the allotted time limit, basically bringing up even this question of, hey, by the way, according to Moses' tweet, you got 30 minutes and you're out, basically, right? Everybody has to be out in 30 minutes. That's a nightmare already right there. So the admin's got this in the back of his head. He's just like, well, okay, great. We're supposed to be ending this as soon as possible. And now I have something that actually could take a little bit of time, because this is where it comes up. So if you're thinking about like the rules and what proper rules should look like sometimes, right? I mean, it should be, right, here are the rules, here are the infractions, and here are the penalties, all clearly outlined, right? If you do this, you get punished with this. There you go. Boom, boom, boom. There should be no discussion, right? If the admin, if he sees, right, okay, you've broken this rule. I mean, yes, it's written that the admin has the final say on everything, but that leaves it up for a lot of interpretation as far as what is the punishment? And they don't have that here, right? That's my one gripe. The first thing that I'm thinking when I look at these rules now is like, okay, great. So I see what they can, like, that's clearly listed. Great, show good sportsmanship. All right, that can be, interpreted, but be only connected to the approved voice server along with their teammates. Okay, boom, there, a rule that's pretty clear cut, right? If you're in, a mumble along with the team speak, and you've got other guys talking to you in that mumble when you're supposed to only be in the team speak with your players, with your teammates, right? Pretty clear. Boom, there. Okay, infraction of the rule. Wearing noise canceling headset was another pretty clear infraction, right? But what's the punishment, right? What's the penalty? And that's where, I'm scrolling around on this page and I'm not seeing a penalty in this page right here. The only place where I really see penalties outlined, right, is when you go down to the bottom where it's like sanction policy. And that's where they start to say, okay, ask after discovery, right? So they've already stated in another section of these rules that it's up to the admin, the referee, to have last say on anything, right? Now we go down sanctions policy, list of sanctions, right? After discovery of any player, coach, or manager committing any violations of the present rules, the regulation committee may apply the following actions. The regulations committee, not the admin. So already, okay, is it the admin who has the call? No, apparently it's a regulations committee that has the call, may apply the following sanctions. Verbal warning, game loss. So I'm assuming they mean map loss with game loss, because I'm assuming that match loss, the one that comes next, means if you're in a best of 3, you can lose the entire best of 3 right off, and disqualification. But that's a pretty stiff, steep jump, right? You get a verbal warning or you lose the whole game. That's kind of tough. If these are your 4 options, right, that's a pretty big leap. If the guy, infringes the rules in some way, maybe it's a minor rule, right? Like he talked to somebody he wasn't supposed to talk to, right? Or there was some weird infraction. Like, do they lose the game automatically, right? You can see where this gets a little bit frustrating if you're an admin in particular, because all of a sudden it's just like there's a lot of gray area here, and all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, you lose the entire game, right? If I've already given you a verbal warning. And also, well, I mean, it is pretty clear here as well, though, because it's just like you already have that verbal warning. So was Henny given a verbal warning? Was that not enough? What was the discussion after that? Was game loss even in the discussion? It's just way too gray, the whole thing through and through. And so this is where really, like rules, obviously we don't really think about this until after the fact. And that's the frustrating thing, right? Is that when you're a tournament organizer, right, you're kind of just putting these rules there because in general, the players are going to be respecting the rules regardless, right? Wearing your headset seems like a pretty straightforward standard thing. And then you're supposed to have admins behind them that are watching these sorts of things as well. And so things get caught before they can even happen, right? But what if, right? And that's what is come up here, I think. It's just that, okay, they got into a situation that they hadn't planned for because a player actually did infringe on the rules. And I think this is where the admin, unfortunately, decided to have a little bit of a call. I'm thinking back to what happened with the Olaf boost, right, at DreamHack Winter 2014, match between Fnatic and LDLC at the time, and what had happened there. I mean, that was just a massive scandal. As you guys, if you were back then, you remember Fnatic. I mean, people burning Fnatic mouse pads and cutting up their shirts and all sorts of horrible shit. And the players thinking that they were going to retire. I mean, this kind of situation is what that stems from. But the way that DreamHack handled it back then was, right, okay, this has happened, right? they can see through these textures. That took them hours to get to. Also, keep in mind, imagine if the Olaf boost had happened. Like, this is what we were all talking about, right? Imagine we did get our grand finals, our dream grand finals at the time, when it was Fnatic versus LDLC would have been the grand finals. And imagine Overpass was the last map. And imagine they had done the boost then. Think about the nightmare for admins at that point, right? Where it gets protested, and then, you know, the tournament's supposed to be over. We're supposed to have a champion, but no, everything gets protested, everything gets changed up, and then what happens, right? That's a horrible sort of scenario. So it's like a one-up worse for Northern Arena, because at least it happened in the quarterfinals for DreamHack, and they were able to have the whole night to review, which is what happened. Both teams ended up petitioning the admins, and I'm not against admins. They can be petitioned by the players. But at the end, what happened was the players petitioned the admins, sure. But then the admins went off on their own with the tournament organizers and took several hours to demo review, check it from all angles, look through their rule set, everything, go through it point for point for point, list for list. The entire thing was discussed before they came to their own conclusion. The players at that point had zero say in it whatsoever, right? No talking, no nothing. They hadn't talked to them in hours, right? So the DreamHack had managed to just completely, you know, cut themselves off from the players. It was their decision. They took control of the situation. It was their decision, and it was their decision in the end, right? And that seems, to me at least, off of what I've seen on the Reddit, what I've seen everywhere else, right? It's just that it seems like there was a bit of a discussion. There's a video up where both Zeus and Nothing are petitioning the admin, right? But then it cuts off right at the juicy part for me, which is where, you know, we should be, you know, if we had it, ideally we would see what would have happened after that, where, you know, the admin was talking. Was he still being talked to by Zeus? Was he still talking to Nothing? Was there anything when he made the final ruling, or was he off on his own? They reviewed everything and then made the ruling, right? That's the tough situation. Was he directly influenced right there? You know, was Nothing clearly saying you should do this? If that's the case, I haven't seen it on the subreddit. I've looked through most of the threads at this point, but that's a tricky sort of scenario, right? And if the admin did say, you know, to Nothing, you know, that, hey, what do you think? Then that's also a real problem, right? Because, okay, your rules are shit, and that sucks because you don't have things clearly outlined on what you need to do given each situation, and perhaps you lack the experience to also just be able to intuitively make the call on your own. But right now, what I think is basically at the end of the day, the admin's ruling, that's at the end of the day, it comes back down to just the admin, right? Whether Nothing tells them what to do or not, it's entirely the admin's call. And if the admin says, right, this is the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be, because he has to be the voice of God. But yeah, just this entire sort of scenario is just, it clearly illustrates just that right now, I think what needs to happen, or what could be very interesting, perhaps Wessa wants to take a look at this, but right, some kind of clear rule set where it is entirely thought out point for point the entire way through and through. I've seen ESL's rule sets as well, right? I usually, in general, what happens is I ask for the rules before a tournament starts so that I can see the rules, go over the rules, and so that myself, I know off the fly, right, okay, he did this is the repercussion for that, right? You know, he infringed this rule, okay, I know, otherwise I have the rules with me and I can quickly consult, right, okay, blah. But, and I know that, saying that, right, I know that ESL also, for example, have, a lot of things that are open for interpretation, right, where it's going to be on the admin to make the call. And it says, it just says that it has that line, that kind of catch-all line where it's just like, right, if you do this, it's the admin's decision as to what happens to you next. And it's not necessarily very clear as to what happens, right? And so that's something that's that needs to get talked about a little bit more, right? And once again, we've had a sort of scenario now where, big uproar, rules have been broken. What actually happens? What's the process behind this, right? And I think now is an interesting time. Perhaps this is Wessa, perhaps this is others, perhaps a third party that needs to come in and just say, right, okay, well, how can we go about actually getting a standardized rule set that if you run a CSGO tournament, right, these are the rules. You may change the tournament format, for example, but when it comes to penalties and general rules that can apply to a majority of the tournaments out there, right, as far as headset wearing, etc. These are the rules, and this is what happens if you infringe those rules, and that way it's completely clear. It doesn't change from tournament to tournament. It doesn't leave any room for interpretation. I mean, at the end of the day, it will always be admin has the final say, but you can have very clear rules for the more blatant forms of a scenario like this, right, where it's just like headset came off. Right. Okay. That's that is a 3-round penalty, for example. Right. So fun times. This turned into a bit of a ramble. 15 minutes long, a little bit over. Sorry about that, guys. A lot to talk about. But end of the day, it seems to me like, still experienced admins and clear rules. That's at the root what is always going to be so important for a tournament, because you need to have somebody who has the experience in position and who's going to be able to make the call based off of the facts that he has in front of him immediately, right? And leave no room for interpretation. No players getting involved, no outside people getting involved, none of that, right? At the end of the day, it has to come down to the admin whose responsibility it is to run the tournament effectively, right? To just sit, make that call, say, this is how it's going to be, end of story, there you go. No room for discussion.